Going to welcome in the great Jay Bilis, ESPN college basketball analyst. You can find him, a must-follow on Twitter, of course, at Jay Bilis. The book, Toughness, which you can find on Amazon. Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate it as we kick off the college basketball season. And you were tweeting about Michigan State 79-76 loss to JMU. What was the main takeaway? My assumption is Izzo uses this for motivation, but what'd you see in this one?
Yeah, they weren't very good. I think Michigan State's got a top 5, top 10 team personnel-wise, but, they must have missed 15 free throws. I watched the tape this morning of the game. I had it on last night, but I was going back and forth among a bunch of different games. And when I watched the tape this morning, they missed a bunch of free throws. They went 1 of 20 from 3. So they knocked down a few free throws. They win the game. But, they put a ton of pressure on their defense by not finishing plays. I didn't think they weren't as aggressive as I expected them to be, having a veteran team. But, you've seen years in the past where Michigan State has started out slowly and they're there at the end. So maybe this was, I'm not a big believer in wake-up calls, but maybe this was a wake-up call for them because they're far better than they played. And James Madison's good. That's a good opening game to play. It's just not a good opening game to lose.
Jay, number one, Kansas was dominant last night, but Dajuan Harris now takes over running the show for Jalen Wilson. Is he good enough to lead this team when you look at the guys he can feed with Dickinson, McCullough, and Adams?
Yeah, he's more than good enough. He's one of the top 5 point guards in the country and the best defensive point guard in the country. Outstanding passer. He's been a little, I guess you'd call him a reluctant shooter his first few years there. But I think he can shoot it when he's open and make them. And I think he has to be a little more aggressive. That's sort of the one question mark I have about Kansas as the number one team is, do they shoot it well enough from the perimeter? And, Hunter Dickinson, who transferred in from Michigan, you mentioned I think he was their leading scorer last night, lefty. He can step away and knock down threes. He's a little bit vulnerable in pick-and-roll defense, but do they have other guys that can consistently make shots? It's going to be interesting to see.
You hear the voice. It's synonymous with college basketball, and it's back, Jay Bilis. So you've got a 2-12 matchup on Friday with Duke and Arizona, but in the Bilis Index, it's a 2-10 matchup. You've got Duke 2, you've got Arizona 10, and your little top 10 here. Help us with a scout on these two teams.
Well, Duke is really talented, and they've got some experienced players back, led by Jeremy Roach and Kyle Filipowski, and Mark Williams didn't play in Mark Mitchell didn't play in their first game. I expect that he'll be back. Really versatile lefty that can guard multiple positions. Duke is not as proficient shot blocking, protecting the rim this year. They lost Derek Lively II, who's doing great with Dallas. So they're going to have to be more creative defensively to try to keep Kyle Filipowski out of foul trouble. So my guess is they'll trap the post a little bit more, maybe trap some ball screens and try to be a little bit more disruptive so that he's not having to pick up extra fouls around the rim. And Arizona's they're big again. They've got a lot of size. Umar Ballo's their best player. But their guards are very good. They got Caleb Love, who transferred in from North Carolina. They put up 122 points in their first game. They played Morgan State, but still, I hadn't seen anybody else put up 122. So Tommy Lloyd runs great offense, and they're going to score. So that's a fabulous game right out of the gate for both Duke and Arizona. It's a real challenge for Arizona to have to go on the road and play in that environment.
Jay, Jon Scheyer. What has allowed him to step in for Coach K and not skip a beat in recruiting, actually even elevate it a little bit based on what he's been able to bring in the last couple of years?
Well, he'd been doing it for a while under Coach K. I think he'd been an assistant there for 9 years, and he was essentially the coach in waiting for an entire year. So he had a little bit of a head start, I would say, of everybody knowing it was going to be him. And so he was able to get prepared and have a really good first recruiting class. He won, 27 games last year. They wound up getting beat in the tournament in the second round, I believe, by Tennessee in just an ultra-physical game. I think they were better than that. I thought they were a Sweet 16, Elite 8 team. maybe even Final Four with the right draw. But that sort of physicality for that young of a team got him in the second round. John's really mature for his age. He's very young. I think he's in his early mid-30s, whatever it is. But he's young, but he's really smart, and he gets it. He's got a great demeanor. He's great with the players. But he did some things last year that first-year coaches don't usually do. They went undefeated at home. They won the ACC tournament championship. Ranked all year long. It was really, really an impressive debut, and he's got an outstanding recruiting class again. Then he winds up getting Cooper Flagg coming in next year, who is the #1 recruit in the country. So he's got the talent pipeline continuing to flow.
At Jay Bilis on Twitter, you talked about 3 teams that could make a run this year. How about last year with FAU, Jay? They return all 5 starters. Are they going to be a threat again?
Yes, they're going to be really good. I didn't anticipate them being this good last year. I watched them during the season, but I wasn't looking at them saying there's a Final Four team. I thought, hey, they can beat somebody in the tournament, but Final Four, they were, and that's how thin the line is for a team like Florida Atlantic, who's really good. But they were a stupid turnover by Memphis away from getting beat in the first round. And nobody be talking about them. That's how big this tournament is for, sort of establishing who you are and who you can be. But they took advantage of the run, and I think Dusty May is a great coach. And he was I think people probably know this by now after all the publicity they got, but he was a manager under Bob Knight at Indiana and coached with Mike White at Florida and all that. He's got a great pedigree. And he's another guy like Jon Scheyer. It's got a great demeanor with the players, and they play really hard. They are very difficult to guard because of how versatile they are. And while they're small, they've got 2 really good big guys. And Vlad Golden is a 7-footer and a really good player. Played at Texas Tech, so they're legit, but. The hard part, they could take a few more losses. They got a better schedule, regular season this year, so they could take a couple more losses this year than they had last year and be a better team. And they can be a better team and lose in the second round. That's sort of the difficulty of the NCAA tournament.
Jay, you've got Purdue at #4. 2-part question here. Does Matt Painter finally get over the hump and get this team to a Final Four? And can Zach Edey become the first player since Ralph Sampson to repeat as Naismith Player of the Year?
I like Edey's chances just because he's so efficient. And at his size, 7'4", he stays out of foul trouble. He's easy to play with. Ridiculous. He makes his free throws, and he gets fouled way more than the referees call. And that's not a knock on the referees. It's just when you got somebody that big. It's like Shaq in the NBA. He got fouled way more than got called. LeBron, things like that. The sort of physical anomalies don't get the calls that smaller players seem to, at least in my judgment. And I don't think I'm alone there. But can Matt Painter get over the hump? Yes, he can. You guys remember in 2019 when it Carson Edwards, they were in the Final Four right before Virginia wound up pulling off that miracle at the end of the game when Mamadi Diakite hit that shot at the buzzer to send it into overtime. So they've been right there. I think the hard part is going to be, and I'm sure Matt has acknowledged this publicly. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen all his quotes and everything, but they've owned the fact that 3 years in a row they've lost a double-digit season in the tournament. And one of them was in a later round. They lost in the later round to St. Peter's a couple years ago. But, last year in the first round, that was kind of inexplicable to lose to Fairleigh Dickinson the way they did. They played horribly, and not to take anything away from Fairleigh Dickinson, but Purdue was horrible. And so how do you do that? How do you get over those emotional scars when you get back? And, I mentioned Virginia haven't beaten them, and that was a year after Virginia had been beaten by UMBC in the first round. They were the first #1 overall seed to lose to a 16 seed, Purdue being the second. So, I thought Tony Bennett did a really good job with his team of owning it, but people forget in the year after they lost to UMBC, they were down 14 in the first half of their first round game. And that's an emotional hurdle to get over, and Purdue's got to get over it.
You're an institution. We look forward to the call on Friday. Duke, Arizona. Jay Bilas, college basketball, ESPN. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, at Jay Bilas on Twitter.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.